Hi everybody. Sorry we're a little bit late, but welcome to our PlantPure kitchen. I'm Kim Campbell and we're live tonight in our small town of Mebane, North Carolina. And if you have never done our cook-alongs, you should join us. We cook along every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are interested in getting the weekly recipes, sign up in the link below. There's a sign up and I send them out on Fridays so you'll know what you're going to be making next week. So this week we're making an Irish St. Patrick's Day celebratory meal. We're making Colcannon soup and Irish soda bread. So, and it's really, really simple. I mean, the soup is based on potatoes because what Colcannon is in Ireland is it's mashed potatoes with cabbage, or sometimes they put kale in it, sometimes they put leeks in it, they put lots of milk and lots of butter. So I wanted to turn it into a soup and make the Irish soda bread to go with it. Irish soda bread is a quick bread. It's not gluten-free, but it is oil-free and very low in sugar. So let's get started. We're going to start with the soup. I have leeks in the soup, and I want to go over a little bit about how I prepare a leek. I have carrots. I have a couple of cups of sliced cabbage. It takes a very small cabbage or just like half of a cabbage. I have potatoes that are all cut up. And let's get started. I'm going to just heat up my pan a little bit. And I always tell everybody to keep something near the stove so that when you're sauteing, you can use water or vegetable broth, but we don't use oil. So it's important that we have something to keep things from sticking to the pan. So while that's heating up, let's talk about leeks. Leeks are really, people are intimidated because I think they're dirty. They have a lot of sand and dirt down in them. So the trick is, how do you get the sand and the dirt out? How do you slice them? So I'll just go over that real quickly. The first thing that I do is I just slice it right down the middle. I'm going to move this. And pull it apart. You can, at this point, if you want to wash it, because it's got a lot of sand down in it, you can see it's got some sand, or you can just start slicing it without washing it and then wash it later when you're all done, which is what I do. And then I take the ends off, put it flat so you can cut it nicely. Take the ends off, slice them off, toss them. And then just go down. If you want small pieces, you can cut your leek in half even more. Oops. And then just start slicing them like this. And I think if you're going to take the time to cut leeks, you might as well cut a whole bunch of them. And with the leek, I would go to right about here. And then this is more of the woody, tough part, so you can use it for vegetable broth. If you're cooking something for a long time and you cut this really fine, it'll work too. So I'm just going to set this aside, put it over here, because we're not going to finish that. I've already cut my leeks, but you know, leeks always come in a bundle of 3. A lot of times the recipe only calls for 1 or 2. Go ahead and cut them all up. I think my pan is probably very hot. So we're going to start by adding the leeks, which leeks are, by the way, in the onion family. So if you don't like onions, this is a much milder flavor onion.
Yeah, someone was just asking Kim the difference in flavor between an onion and a leek.
Leeks are not, you know how onions can make your eyes, water, and they can be kind of strong. It's just sort of like a mild onion. I want to say like a green onion almost. Then I'm going to add the cabbage. Colcannon means white cabbage in Gaelic. So that's where that came from. And I have a little bit of water that I'm just going to kind of throw in the pan.
What do you do with the unused cut leeks, Kim?
Unused cut leeks? You could use them in veg broth. So what I do sometimes is I take a baggie and I fill it with scraps. That would be a scrap, or maybe you're peeling carrots, those are scraps, and you throw them all in a baggie and then you can freeze them. And then later you can make vegetable broth with them. Just stick them in some water and boil them and strain them. If you're inclined to make vegetable broth. I don't make it very often. I should because it's delicious. Then we're going to add carrots to this.
Can you actually freeze the unused leeks?
Yes, you can. You can freeze them just as they are. You can see how colorful this is. And then you really just want to soften it a little bit. And then you're going to add all of your veg broth to it. I have 4 cups of vegetable broth. Just be really careful if you're buying vegetable broth to buy it so it's low in sodium, because some of them are really, really high. So just be looking at the nutrition labels for that. Put that in there. And then we'll add the potatoes. So I actually cut these potatoes this morning at like 10 o'clock. And potatoes, if you cut them, they're like an apple, they turn brown. But if you just keep them in some water, they'll stay nice and they haven't turned brown at all. So I just soaked them in water all afternoon. I'm going to drain it a little bit. That's good. And then go ahead and put the potatoes in there. The smaller you cut the potatoes, the quicker it's going to cook. So with potatoes, however big you want them is fine. I just like them smaller because they cook so much quicker. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this to a boil, and then we'll add everything else to it. So this is it's a thick soup, so of course we have to put some cream in it. We don't use cream, so we're going to use water and cashews and a little bit of flour. So the next, I have 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 cups of water and about 1/2 cup of cashews, raw cashews. You don't want to get the roasted because the roasted has a lot of salt and a lot of sugar, just plain raw cabbage or raw cashews. And then nutritional yeast flakes. Somebody asked me today if they could leave out the nutritional yeast flakes because they didn't like them. Absolutely. I think they add a cheesy flavor, but if you're not into that, then leave it out. And then 1/4 cup of, I used whole wheat flour. You can use oat flour if you want to use cornstarch, a couple tablespoons of cornstarch. You could do that if you want this to be gluten-free. It's super easy to keep it gluten-free. So what we're going to do is we want this to come up to a boil, get it really hot, and then we'll turn it down on low. So I'm going to put this on top of the Vitamix. If you don't have a Vitamix, you can soak your cashews, and if you soak them or you boil them, they pulse up really nicely. All right, here we go. Turn this on.
Hey, Kim, Carol wants to know if you used your chop wizard to cut the potatoes.
I did not. I cut those by hand. I was watching an interview in the kitchen and I was cutting potatoes. You don't know this about me, but I actually like to cut, and so it's kind of meditative. But no, I did not. But I do use my chop wizard a lot.
And Kim, you're getting a couple questions here about your Chibo class. One person had some questions, and so I hope it's okay. I just gave out your email.
Yeah, that's fine. You can give out my email.
Constance here wants to know how she can get the ingredient list for the tamale class.
Okay, if you sign up for Chibo, there's a fee for that. You go to Chibo, and it's linked to, if you go to my link tree, it's linked to that, and we should have a link to it underneath the show notes as well. Is it there, Nelson?
Let me check.
It should be. If it's not, it will be. We're going to have, we'll put it there.
Oh, no, it's there.
Okay.
Yep.
So you click that, then you can sign up for the class. When you sign up for the class, you'll get the grocery list, you'll get the recipe, you'll get everything you need. So there's still plenty of room in the class. So I was going to talk about that tonight. I hope everybody will consider taking the Chibo. So what's the difference between Chibo and what I do on Thursday night? I would never do tamales on a Thursday night because we are going to be soaking corn husks. We're going to be making a masa dough. We're going to be roasting tomatillos. So I'm going to be talking a lot about tamales, how they're made. So that's on, and it's probably going to take an hour, and hopefully you'll cook along with me. That's Tuesday night at 6:30, and in the show notes you can sign up. So did I answer all those questions?
Yes, you did.
I'm excited. I've never done a Chibo class. I've watched them, but I've never done one, so I think this will be a lot of fun.
And Lula wants to know, where do you find corn husks?
So I got mine at Walmart in the Mexican section. Depends on how big your city is. We have a lot of Mexican products and Asian products in our Walmart. If you can't find them in Walmart, you could go to an Asian market. We'll carry them, a Latin market. If you can't, you could also order them online. I don't know how long Amazon it would take to get them to you. All right, so this is starting to boil. I'm going to kind of move along here a little bit. And I'm going to add this. A lot of times you see me making like a cashew milk. I use cashews and water or cashews and milk because anything in the plant-based kingdom that you want to get creamy and thick and have a nice mouthfeel that you would get if you were using cream or yogurt, you can get that with cashews and water. So a lot of people say, well, I don't eat nuts, or I don't eat cashews, I don't eat nuts and seeds. You can use sunflower seeds. That's a seed. So if you have an allergy, you can go that route. You can try white beans, but white beans are not going to give it the same mouthfeel. Some people use coconut milk, maybe a little bit, half coconut milk, half regular soy milk. So there's different ways you can go with that. This only has a half a cup of cashews in it though, so it's not a huge amount. So cashews have a natural thickening power. So I have the flour is going to thicken it, but the cashews are going to thicken it too, and it's going to give it a nice mouthfeel. So I'm going to turn that down, and then when we end, I'm going to put something kind of different in this. I'm going to put sauerkraut in it. I love sauerkraut, and there's all different kinds. This one I'm using is dill and garlic, but the first one I made, we did it with regular sauerkraut. It was delicious. So we're going to put 1.5 cups of sauerkraut in that. I'm going to put my smoked paprika in, which is about 1/2 teaspoon of that. Put a little bit of salt and pepper in, and that's, oops, it's not coming out. And that's really it. And I'll probably put the sauerkraut in there, you know, towards the end. So we'll just let that cook and do its thing, and it will get thick. And when you have it for leftovers, it gets thicker in the refrigerator, so you might have to thin it out just a little bit. All right, the Irish soda bread. You can tell I'm excited about that. I'm more excited about the Irish soda bread than I am this, even though this is really, really good. Isn't it, Nelson?
Yes, actually, when you first said you were going to do this, I'd had this before, and I wasn't, you know, I thought it was a good recipe, but not one of your best ones. But you know what? This was actually one of your best recipes, and it's because of the sauerkraut and the creaminess of the broth and all the way you did all the flavors together. It was,
yeah, a lot of flavors dancing around in this. If you leave the sauerkraut out, you're going to leave out a lot of flavor. You can still do it, but it's going to be a little more bland. All right, so Irish soda bread is typically made, before I talk, I want to make the buttermilk. I have, because I want it to sit for a bit, I have 1 3/4 cup of soy milk. You can use almond milk. You can really use any plant-based milk. I like soy milk because it's a little higher in protein and it has a little more fat in it. So what's going to happen is it's going to curdle better than others. So we're going to put 2 tablespoons of lemon juice down in it, and that's your acid. And then we'll give it a little stir, and then we're just going to let it sit. All right, so now I can talk about Irish soda bread. It's basically made with whole wheat flour. Some people use white flour. It's made with buttermilk, which buttermilk is what's left over after they take the cream and they make the butter. It's what's left over. It's kind of sour and tangy. I don't know it. We never had it growing up, but you can. We always made it. My mom used to say, "You can make it. Just put the, just put your acid in the milk, and it works beautifully." And then you put your baking soda in it. Make sure you use baking soda because this is your leavening agent. Also gives it a little bit of flavor, and it activates with the acid. So the buttermilk helps this to activate, helps it to poof. The buttermilk also helps the bread to be a little more tender because it's a quick bread. So I'm going to add a couple of teaspoons of baking soda. Don't add 3, make sure you do 2, but don't add too much because then you'll really taste it and it just won't be pleasant.
Hey, Kim, someone with a really wonderful screen name, Strawberry Rose Honeybee.
Strawberry what?
Someone with a nice screen name, Strawberry Rose Honeybee.
Oh, I like that.
Yes, wants to know if it's okay if the paprika is smoked.
Yes, in fact, it should be smoked because I think I have on the recipe. Did I put smoked? Yes, 1/2 teaspoon of smoked paprika. Because in Colcannon, they a lot of times use bacon, so you want to get that smoky flavor, and that's why I use smoked paprika so much, because you're getting that sort of meaty, smoky flavor. All right, so then you want to make a well. Why do you make a well? That's the question of the day. Why do you make a well in your bread dough or your cake batter? Because when you're mixing it, you don't want it to get too lumpy, so it helps with that. It also helps incorporate it a little bit slower. And then you put the milk in the center. Actually, I forgot. I have to add the rest of the ingredients. So a lot of times, soda bread this is it. This is all it is. Sometimes they put a little salt in it. I'm not putting salt in it tonight. Sometimes they put raisins in it. Sometimes they put just nuts in it. This one has nuts, 1/2 cup, and I just took a mixture. I used pumpkin seeds, and there's almonds, and there's walnuts, and I put a little bit of quinoa in it. So you could use any mix or blend of nuts and seeds. Just make sure that they're not roasted and full of all kinds of oils. Couple of teaspoons of coconut sugar. That's my sugar of choice when I use sugar. And then 1/2 cup of golden raisins. You can use regular raisins. I just like the way the golden looked. And mix it up. That's it. Ooh, this soup is getting really thick. See how easy? That is the easiest soup to make. I think we should make a meal kit out of it, Nelson.
Didn't you say there was some story behind this bread?
Yes, I'll tell it at the end.
Oh,
I'll tell it at the end.
Wasn't sure if you remembered, but yeah, I forgot what it was.
You know, it's funny. Every time I research a food, there's always some kind of story behind it, some kind of strange story. All right, so the buttermilk, you can see the curdles? It's curdling. Those are the proteins coagulating. So the reason you want to use buttermilk is because it makes things a little bit more tender. It helps to activate the baking soda. I'm going to go ahead and put this in. And of course, I tested this with the flour that I made. Here's the thing. Every flour is different. So I would suggest that you keep some flour on hand because you might need to add a little bit more, or maybe you'll need to put a little more milk in there. But I used white whole wheat flour. Okay, we don't want to over mix this, and you don't want to knead it, because what you don't want to do is get those gluten strands really, pulling and activated. You want to keep it tender. So the way to do that is to stir it and move it around as little as possible.
Hey, Kim, Henrietta wants to know how much coconut sugar you use.
I use 2 tablespoons. So if you don't want it sweet, you can leave it out. If you want it sweeter, you could put 3 in. So you can see it's starting to come together. It feels a little bit wet, but that's okay. So.
And can you use oat flour?
Oat flour, I don't know if this would work with oat flour. That's a good question. It's different than wheat, because wheat, you're going to get probably a bigger lift from it. Oat flour can be very, very dense. All right, so I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper so I don't make a mess up here.
And where do you find coconut sugar?
Coconut what?
Coconut sugar.
Sugar. Most grocery stores have it in the baking section. I know our Walmart has it. Most grocery stores do have it. Okay, so you can see I'm kind of putting it out here, and it's kind of rough. Irish soda bread is a shaggy bread. It's kind of shaggy and it's kind of rough and rustic, and that's what's nice about it. Put your hands on it, kind of work it a little bit. I also have flour here too. Just a little bit of flour in case it gets too sticky. Okay. So I had to add probably maybe another 1/4 of a cup to the 3 cups. That's it right there. That's it. That's exactly what you want it to look like. You don't want to go any further than that. So I'm going to take my pan, put it on there, shape it, and then some people say flip it over after you shape it. I don't think you need to do that. Don't worry about all the cracks and how messy it looks. It's okay. It's not yeast bread.
And you know, Kim, the bread really goes with the soup. I mean, you really do have to make them both together.
It does. Okay, I just want to wash my hands really quick, just really quick.
How about Bob's Red Mill gluten-free flour? Would that
You know, I thought about that. The only thing I could tell you is that you'd have to try it. I did do a little research on gluten-free Irish soda breads, and there are a lot of recipes. So if you just Google gluten-free vegan Irish soda bread, because they're all very similar, and see what you find, because I would suggest you go to someone who's actually played around with it, because flours can be funny, fussy things. So now what we're going to do is we have to bless the bread, because in Ireland they always bless the bread, and the way they bless the bread is, I'll bring it over here, Brian, so you can see stuff. Move this. They would cut an X in it. Some people say, oh well, that's so that the center cooks better, but you cut an X, and they would, you know, the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. I was watching this lady make Irish bread, and I was just so intrigued. So that's how they bless the bread. And then they poke it on the edges, and that's supposed to keep the fairies away, because the fairies will jinx the bread. So there you go. That's Irish soda bread. Is that what you were talking about, Nelson?
Well, yeah, you were saying something about that. I couldn't remember what the details were.
Yeah, I love finding little things like that. All right, so I'm going to throw this in the oven. The oven is hot. You want it hot. I have it on 425 degrees. And you put it on for 25 minutes and check. Every oven's different, but I think you want it at least 400. So we'll put that in here. All right. So you're going to add about 1.5 cups of sauerkraut. Nelson and I are really on this sauerkraut kick now. And I love kimchi, which is really just Korean sauerkraut, and it's really spicy. They have a lot of flavors. This one, I think, just use regular sauerkraut. I said to put 1.5 cups of sauerkraut.
Now, this is not a part of the traditional recipe. This is just something you came up with.
This is, I don't know. I see potatoes, and I just think cabbage, and then I think sauerkraut, which is just fermented cabbage. I make sauerkraut in the summertime. I love to make sauerkraut. It's the easiest thing. It has probiotics in it. You just chop up your cabbage, and you put some salt in it, and you just massage it, put it in jars, and forget about it. And a week or two later, it's sauerkraut.
Hey, Kim,
so
Mary lost her connection momentarily, and she wasn't sure when the paprika went in, and apparently it's not in the recipe.
It's not in the recipe. It should say 1.5 cups of sauerkraut, and then after the sauerkraut, it should say 1/2 teaspoon of smoked paprika. If it doesn't, then we've made a mistake. I printed mine off, so I don't know. All right, I'm going to taste it. Oh my goodness, that is so good. You know what I think of when I think of cabbage soup? I think of a Reuben sandwich. So think about a Reuben sandwich. I actually wanted to make a Reuben soup, And I just went with this, but it's so good. And then we're going to garnish it with a little bit of green onions and a little bit of red pepper flakes. And Nelson said the other day, he goes, you know, this soup is kind of spicy. I said, no, I didn't put anything spicy in it. But I realized that I put the red pepper flakes in so as a garnish. So if you're putting red pepper flakes in, they get hotter and hotter and hotter. So the next day they might be more spicy than you think.
Yeah, apparently the paprika is in the recipe, so.
All right, so here's my finished bread. Comes out really nice, and you can tell if it's done because it sounds really hollow. Can you hear that? And you can break it in half. Oh, Brian, you have to get this. Look at that.
This meal is so good.
And then get your serrated knife. Make sure you use a serrated knife. You can see how nice that is. It's actually really light. It's good the next day. I toasted it. Don't forget to put the raisins in. You must put the raisins in. It's really good.
Hey, Kim, Mary's still unsure as to when the paprika goes in. It just goes into the...
You can just throw it in when you're putting all the vegetables in. This is kind of a one-pot meal. You can throw it all in at once if you want. I just left the sauerkraut out until the end. The other thing that you can do is if you're not quite sure, I don't know if I like sauerkraut, put in a little bit at a time, because maybe a cup and a half is not good for you. A cup and a half was good for me, but I'm a sauerkraut hound, so...
Yeah, it wasn't an overpowering flavor, though. It really does make the recipe. So
yeah, it really does. And get your sauerkraut in the produce section, in the refrigerated section, because that's what has live probiotics. So again, tomorrow, the next Tuesday, we're doing Chibo. It's a paid class. It's a longer class. There'll be less of you. You can actually ask questions. It's kind of interesting. You can ask questions, and we can all hear you. So we're hearing each other talk, which we don't hear that here, but Chibo has the ability to do that. So I hope you'll join me for that. I hope you'll sign up if you like this, and we'll send you more recipes. Nelson's still raising his hand.
Yeah, there's one more question here from Anne, who wants to know about whether it would make sense to use caraway seeds, and I think she's probably talking about the bread, but
yes.
I'm not. But
it does make sense. And in fact, I went to the store and I looked for caraway seeds. I went to 2 different grocery stores and they didn't have it. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to use it because Nelson doesn't like caraway seeds.
I was just going to say I'm not sure it would go right with the flavors that are in the bread. But
well, the sauerkraut that I bought has dill and garlic in it. But they had some with caraway seeds. But Nelson always
you're talking about the soup. I was talking about the bread.
Oh yeah, you could put caraway in the bread too.
Would that go with the flavors that are in the bread?
Probably not, because it's
I
more
don't think
of
it
a
would.
sweet. But the caraway seeds would go really nice in this soup. So, all right. So I'm going to close it here, and I'm going to tell everybody, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up, because that helps us with YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe to our list every Friday that goes out, our PlantPure list. And then join me next week, because I'm making fig Newtons. I'm calling them old-fashioned fig Newtons, and you'll get your recipe tomorrow. They're so good. I've made them 3 times. They're delicious. So we'll be here on Thursday night making cookies, and I hope I see a lot of you in Chibo. So I will let you go. Enjoy this wonderful spring weather that we're getting, and we'll see you back here in a week.